I must go polish my knives. Where are those forks? They need a good buffing.
Eavesdroppin.
Michelle.
Geordie, hello.
Hello. How are you diddling?
I'm diddling and doodling. How are you doing?
Oh, diddly dap dap dop doo. I'm scatting. Scatting.
Scat.
What's scat short for? Scatological?
You know that's not the case. You know what that word means.
That.
And we love a bit of poo talk on this very podcast.
Let's just dive straight into the poo talk. I'm the scat man. Do you remember that awful song? Wasn't it stupid?
I don't remember that. Scat man.
Scat man. There was an old bloke who sang a song called I'm the Scat Man, and he'd do a bit of scatting. Skibbity bap bap boop. Michelle, you seem to not know many songs these days. I don't know what's happened. There's a giant hole in your cheese of a memory, your Swiss cheese of memory there.
Says the woman who doesn't know Avicii. What?
Yeah, but last episode, or the one before last, I think it was, we talked about some songs. I reeled off the 2001 hits. You didn't know any of them. You were like, what's Independent Woman? It's only Destiny's Child.
When you sing it, I'm like, oh, that's what it is. But I just didn't know
the
what
names.
it was called.
Didn't know the names.
No.
I don't know the names, dear.
I can sing along. I just don't know the names.
So what's happening in your world?
Well, I am back in Sweden and it's fucking cold, but beautiful and it's lovely. How about you?
Well, it's been shitty weather here in the UK as well, but suddenly the sun's out, which is nice. That's why I've got my jumper off, but I might pop it back on later. There you go, guys. Not only is it a fashion report, it's a weather report as well. What's it like where you are?
Exactly. Do write in and let us know. And you know what? You probably need to know. You need to write in to Eavesdroppin. You're listening to Eavesdroppin, the podcast.
The podcast, because I'm Geordie.
And I'm Michelle, and you're an eavesdropper. Yes, you are.
That means you're an eavesdropper. You're listening in on our conversation that we have every single week. We've been doing it since November 2020, and hopefully you haven't missed a single one. Michelle, we've had mail.
You've had mail. All right, tell me.
Do you remember I assumed that the belly button writer in was a bot, AI?
A belly bot?
Belly botter.
A belly bot.
Well, they did write back in. He did respond. Do you remember I said, please write in and tell us if you're real, otherwise we won't give you another minute of our time. We were questioning, all the questions about doing whole episodes.
And the slashes.
And the slashes.
The slashes, yeah.
He did get back in contact. And he's just repeated the request for a whole episode on babies and belly buttons. But he did say that he's a listener. So welcome, belly button guy and the girlfriend.
That's so nice. Welcome. And if you can find a story that relates true crime to baby belly buttons, let us know and we're all over it.
Hopefully they're not too horrifying, though, because they are expecting. Congratulations.
Oh, my goodness. So immersion therapy helped, I guess. Or
that's not how you make babies, Michelle. Not by tickling and farting on belly buttons.
No?
No, there's another hole.
Oh.
There's another couple of holes, but you've got to get the right hole with the right other bit.
And it's a goal. It's a goal there. They're having a baby. Well, congrats.
Congrats.
Is that the first eavesdropping baby?
I don't know.
Obviously, if it's a girl, she'll be called Geordie.
What? Geordie's like a man's name, so I think it should be Michelle. The writer-inner, the eavesdropper with the belly button that everybody knows about because it was featured on Ray's episode, he wants to know a lot of questions to be answered about when to send their baby to childcare, whether they can do Zerbits on the belly button of the baby, all that kind of thing. Answers are yes. We can't do a whole episode on it, though, and I wonder why you're asking us, because I don't know. Apart from me having 3 children.
You're a mummy.
Yeah.
You're a mummy.
But that was a long time ago, Michelle. I'm not really up to speed on all the when to take your kids to nursery and whatnot. It depends where you are. I don't know what your plans are. If you're working, I suppose. Usually they can start going at 3. But your midwife will let you know all that stuff and they'll give you pamphlets. So you'll be good to go. Don't worry. Any other burning questions, just ask. But we won't do a whole episode on that.
Well, thank you very much for writing in. We love it.
Listen, Michelle, I've got some distressing news to tell you that I've learnt in the world.
What's happening?
Because I know you live in a bubble.
What's going on? You're frightening me.
Well, you may have heard about this. No one I've spoken to has heard about it. It came to my attention via a pinging news alert. It's the case that shocked France. It's just happened. Where are we now? September 2024. France, a man called Dominique Pellicot, he's aged 71. He's on trial for repeatedly raping his sedated wife and enlisting dozens of men to do the same thing to her over a period of 10 years. She had no idea that deeply sedated was she.
Oh my God, that is absolutely disgusting.
Isn't it? And 50 men are also on trial. 50.
Yeah?
One of them's her neighbour that used to come around and borrow things, and she'd look him in the eye and little knowing what he was up to. These men are aged between 26 and 74. They're also on trial. They're just saying they thought it was all consensual and it was part of a game, which is fucking bullshit.
That is bullshit. They knew exactly what they were doing.
The court proceedings are all public because the wife, who was the victim, Giselle, 71, wanted to raise awareness of drug-facilitated sexual abuse because one of the guys who was raping her also did the same to his own wife. It's been since revealed. So it's a thing. Yeah.
Oh.
He offered her up on a website, filmed the abuse, and she only found out after the police caught him taking underskirt photographs of women at a supermarket, upskirting. And then when they investigated him, they found the footage. And then they had to break it to Giselle. And then she found out she was carrying 4 sexually transmitted diseases. She said she had I know, it's horrific. She had no sympathy from any of the accused. So one of them was HIV positive and he came along 6 times to visit. It's awful.
Oh my God. This is absolutely beyond horrific. And you know what? She's a woman in her 70s. Like
It's been going on for 10 years, yeah.
This is terrible. And also, those men who, especially the neighbour who was like, it was consensual. We thought she knew. Well, if you thought she knew, why didn't you say, hi, great time last night? Because you knew it wasn't consensual.
Sorry, Michelle.
I'm sorry, but, that's...
so inappropriate. I'm not laughing at.
I have a point.
Kind of?
No, but okay.
Hi, great time last night. Is that what you do when you bump into your fiancé in the kitchen? Oh, hi. Great time last night.
I just think that if he knew it was all above board, he would have been like, hey, great time last night. When's the next get together? When's the
next drugged out sesh?
When's the next shindig?
It's awful, isn't it? I don't want people to think we're laughing at this poor woman.
No, we're not laughing at it.
And the reason why I'm raising it, because it's horrific. We do talk about true crime. But the reason why I'm raising it is because something else came to my attention. Currently at the Royal Academy, there's an exhibition. Marina Abramovich, who made me stand for 7 minutes at Glastonbury when I was waiting to see PJ Harvey with my arms stretched outwards
Marina.
in the really hot day. She, in 1974, created this work of art called Rhythm O. It's an art piece which had her standing on her own as the object, as the art. She stood stock still for 6 hours, but next to her were 69 props. And those props and the film of this original 1974 work of art is on at the Royal Academy in London right now. On that table with the props like a glass, a candle, a rose, hairbrush, mirror, comb, lipstick, a gun, a bullet, chains, an axe, a saw, loads of different sharp knives. The rules were the audience could use the props on her as they wished. So she just had to stand there for 6 hours. And at first, everybody was really passive and, doing things like making her hold the rose and bending her arm and whatnot, or writing a note and sticking it on her or something. But as time went on, they got more and more violent and intrusive. They'd use the objects like the knives to cut into her skin. They would rip her clothes. They stuck a knife between her legs. They stuck a piece of paper on her that said vile. And then,
oh my God,
when somebody got the gun and the bullet and put it up to her head, she thought she was going to die. And there's film and pictures of her eyes filling with tears. And then it took one member of the audience to come along and wipe her tears, cover her body. It was a woman. And after that, the tide changed. And those who administered cruelty before, they went running, in shame.
Of course.
But my point of this is, and this relates back to Giselle, the French lady, what happened to her. Everybody seems to be capable of some deep cruelty. As long as somebody else is doing it, that makes it okay. And I want to ask the question, what makes it okay just because someone else is doing it? I want everybody to stop and think. And this is particularly poignant in the UK right now when we had all those riots against immigration in the UK recently.
Right.
People just jumping on board.
We saw this with the McDonald's phone scam. It's like if anyone gets even a slight green light from someone else, it's like, oh, well, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
This must be okay.
It's okay.
Even though you know deep down with your moral compass, it's not okay.
Yeah. If it feels wrong, question.
It's fucking wrong.
Yeah.
I think people will put it to one side for whatever urge it's satisfying within themselves. And it speaks to the basest part of human nature. People say we're just animals, but you peel away those layers of respectability and culture, and at the bottom of it, for some people, it's pretty depraved. I'm actually still processing what you just told me about this French man. It is absolutely rotten. Actually, the stuff of nightmares. Yeah. Thanks.
Sorry. Should I change the subject?
Oh, please do.
Have you got any television recommendations? Ray's just gotten in touch, actually, and said he's giving Love is Blind a go. Good luck with that, Ray. Can't think of it as being up his alley.
I did put the telerex up. And from the episode, I thought you had said that Happy Chappy Charlene was watching My 600-Pound Wife.
That's what I thought she said.
It's life. So it's not about a... It's not this big, enormous 600-pound wife. So I did the telерec and I was like, oh, it's about lots of different people. And yeah, so I just thought apologies to anyone who went out looking for My 600-Pound Wife.
Oh, Charlene, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Maybe it was her fault. Maybe it was mine. I don't know. Maybe there was a slip of the finger somewhere. I don't know.
Maybe it was auto-correct, but yes, I was laughing going, okay, 600-pound life, not wife. So...
Oh, gosh. Well, listen, it's reality TV heaven for me right now because Selling Sunset's back. But do you know what? It doesn't half suck away my time and my life. Oh, my God. And of course, you and I have discussed a very exciting thing, which is Maths UK starting next week. Or did it start last night?
I can't remember. We've got to get onto that.
And also... Slow Horses is back for season, I think it's 4 or 5, and I can't wait, but it's week to week, so I'm going to save it up. And I know a few other people who are doing the same thing, saving it up to have a big binge, because you can't just watch one.
I need to get back on that. I watched season 1 and I've kind of forgot about it, and I know that I've got some really juicy seasons to watch all at once.
Juicy.
Speaking of series that are coming back, it's the Elena Ferrante, My Brilliant Friend, the last season. I believe it's just been released. And when I have a minute, I am very excited to watch that because I loved it.
That's exciting for you, Michelle. I haven't seen that.
Get on it.
And I'm not sure if I'm going to watch it. Not sure. Not sure if it's for me. I think it might be too boring.
What, you think friendships between women?
Yep. Boring.
Oh, my God. Okay, sure. I loved it.
Boring.
I read all the books.
You like the books?
I did.
Well, listen, something has happened in my televisual world. I'm beside myself. First of all, I had to sit through all those episodes of the fucking Tolkien thing, the Lord of the Power of the Ring. That's finished, the first season. I said, can we have a little break, please, before we go straight into the Silk and Windhound season? And my husband agreed. So now we're watching Chaos on Netflix. Fucking hell, Michelle. It's everything.
What is it all about? Never even heard of it.
For me, it's got everything because it's like Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, which I bloody loved when it came out. And it's about Greek myths, which I bloody loved since I was about 8 years old. And I know a lot of the stories. It's kind of like an up-to-date version of the Greek myths.
Modern day setting.
Yeah. Zeus is Jeff Goldblum.
I didn't even know that he was still alive.
Oh, what? Of course he's alive. He's alive and well.
Okay, he's still got a career?
God, yes. Stop that.
I'm joking.
On screen, I mean, there's a lot of hot older men in this.
Who else?
Well, there's Prometheus, which is an all-time favourite of mine, actually. Stephen Delane is the actor's name, and I find him extremely attractive.
It's funny when that happens.
They're old men, Michelle. You won't like them. There's some younger people for you to look at, because I know you like the young men. But for me, an old man, 2 hot older men together, I just didn't know where to cast my eye.
Okay, all right. Middle-aged ladies talking about the hot
older men.
And the hot young ones too. It's terrible.
Well, you like the hot young ones. So that's just everything. It's a visual feast. It's a hot totty fest. And It's great stories, and I can't wait to see where it goes because I just love those myths.
Well, I will definitely be putting that on the Patreon.
Chaos with a K.
Oh, with a K?
Yes, please.
Thank you for telling me that. Otherwise, I'd be looking for that alongside my 600-pound wife.
Hooby-dooby-doo, supernatural. Ghost is in a wall, supernatural. Poltergeist at all, supernatural. We are chatting supernatural. Supernatural. Okay, so today, Michelle, it's a little bit about death.
Great.
That's our theme, right? So I went looking, I went rootin' and a tootin' through the New York Times. I found an article that told me about a neuroscientist named Charlotte Marshall from the University of Liège in Brussels. She'd done a report and it said psychedelics can create a similar experience to a near-death experience.
We have touched on this previously. I'm very curious what she found in her tests.
I didn't include the entire report here. As you can probably imagine, it makes for pretty dry reading. But she recruited 31 people who had had both near-death experience and psychedelic drug experiences in the past, mostly where they were men from the US or Britain, and they were usually traumatic events where they had their NDEs, like car crashes. And some of them had tried psychedelics like LSD or psilocybin mushrooms a handful of times. Others had used them a lot. And they were able to say that they felt like they left the real world with time feeling different and a sense of peace and calm in both experiences. And that the near-death experience made them feel less scared of dying, and that psychedelics made them feel more connected to nature and the universe and other people.
Or you can get a bad trip and it's fucked.
Imagine that. Yeah, sometimes it can go wrong. Near-death experiences, or NDEs, they're surprisingly common. There's about 5 to 10% of the general population who have reported to have experienced them. But what about reincarnation?
Amazing.
Does anybody remember, if they believe in reincarnation, do they remember former lives? We have talked about children remembering, haven't we?
Yes, we have. And scary stuff. People saying, oh, you know, I picked my mummy from a waiting room of people or whatever. And yeah, all that kind of stuff.
The actual concept of reincarnation is not a new one, obviously. It first appeared in the Indian continent around 1100 to 500 BCE, which means before current era or before Christ, depending on which book you read. And it predates Buddha even.
Okay.
And there's a great case coming from India about the earliest recorded reincarnated person, and her name is Shanti Devi. She was born in 1926. To the Mathura family in Delhi. As a baby, she didn't really start speaking or babbling until she was about 4, which is probably about 2 years too late than normal.
Yeah.
But when she did start to talk, it was in a dialect which was completely different from the family's dialect. And she spoke of cleaning silverware.
What?
As a 4-year-old. I must go polish my knives. Well, those forks, they need a good buffing. She would talk of a town called Mathura, and of a picture of Krishna that she wanted back, and of having a husband, this little 4-year-old kid.
Where's my husband?
Tell my husband I want those forks back. I need to buff them.
Oh, my God.
Shanti also told her mum that the fabric that her mum had made a sari out of was low quality. And she knew that because her husband owned a fabric store, and she knew the merchant had lied about its quality. Take that back.
Little bitch.
Take that sari back. It's not good enough for me.
What a little bitch. It's like, and by the way, Mum, sari's cheap.
And then she also shocked the family doctor with her detailed knowledge of cesarean section procedures.
Wow.
Ew, exactly. A little girl saying, oh, yes, and then you take the scissors and you cut right up the middle. She kept telling everyone that her family wasn't really her family and her home wasn't really her real home. And she spoke like an adult woman living a completely different life, which caused lots of tension with her parents and her siblings, and everybody in the family was really miserable about the whole affair. And by age 6, Shanti Devi got into an argument with the twin sons of a lawyer neighbour, which was quite prestigious. The boys had teased her because she did a drawing of a temple and it looked all wrong. And then she replied by saying it's not the local temple, but the one in Mathura. So then she went and asked a passerby, how far is Mathura? And he told her, and then off she went with a little suitcase, and she went off to find Munch.
With a little stick and a gingham sack.
When her dad tried to bring her back, he overheard her describing her wealthy husband and dancing with churis, which are ankle bracelets. And this made him think, maybe she's recalling a past life. And strangely, the headmaster of Shanti Devi's school also had this thought from things that she'd said and the way she spoke. And he thought it might be the case. So he asked her to give him the name and address of this husband she kept banging on about.
Yep.
Which she did. She gave him the name of Kedar Nath Chowbi of 9 Chowbi Street, Mathura. So the headmaster wrote to Kedar Nath, who replied before sending his cousin out to meet Shanti Devi.
Oh, my God.
He didn't go himself.
Okay.
Shanti Devi recognised him immediately, and she convinced this cousin by recounting all these correct facts about his life and hers when she was his cousin's wife.
Fuck. Intense.
And the person who Shanti Devi remembered being was a lady named Lugdi. She had been married at age 10 to Kedar Nath Chowbi, I know, yuck, who owned the fabric shop. Tick.
Okay.
And their first child was stillborn, but then in 1925, hopefully she didn't have him at 10. And then in 1925, Lugdi gave birth to a healthy son by C-section. Hence she knew all about it, in a hospital in Agra. But 9 days later, on the 4th of October, she died of complications and she was aged 23. This was 1 year and 10 months before Shanti Devi was born.
Oh, so she was sitting in that waiting room for a long time, waiting for those parents.
Possibly, if that's what one believes. There's a book by a Swedish writer called Sture Lunnestrand from 1998 called I Have Lived Before, The True Story of the Reincarnation of Shanti Devi. In it, it has all this kind of details and stuff. After Shanti spoke to the cousin, he told his cousin Kedar Nath to go and visit her. He was convinced it was the real deal. So Kedar Nath went off and met Shanti Devi, and in a test he pretended to be his brother and brought along Lugdi's son, the one that she died shortly after giving birth to.
Okay.
Obviously, he's never met a little girl who's claiming to be his mum. A bit weird. When they turned up to Shanti Devi's place, she immediately figured it out. She said, no, you're not the brother, you are Kedar Nath, and you still have that moustache and the facial birthmark that she described to her parents. She'd already described what he looked like to her parents.
Right.
So there was no tricking her. And then she threw her arms around the young boy and cried because she said her soul recognized his soul.
And that it was her son. Oh my goodness. This is like chill bumps kind of stuff.
And then little Shanti Devi then said that Lugdi had hidden 150 rupees in the house and asked Kedar Nath if he had given that money to Krishna as she had said she wanted him to. And she also asked if he kept his promise not to remarry and asked her mum to make Kedar Nath's favourite dishes. So this is the conversation this little girl is having with a grown man in her parents' house.
Yes.
A bit odd.
She's 4 still at this point?
No, I think she's a bit older at this point, probably about 6 or 9 or something, hopefully. When he was still in doubt, Kedar Nath, Shanti Devi asked her parents to leave the room. And in that moment, this little girl told the man some stuff that really did convince him. And I think the reason why the parents were out was because she told him exactly.
Oh, no.
People are assuming that maybe she said, I know you've been unfaithful because I saw you glancing at a nurse and I caught you guys at it later on, or that she recalled sexual positions that they had used to have sex in order for her to get pregnant because Lugdi suffered from arthritis. So they had to be a bit careful in bed. Yeah.
And so he was like, this is my wife in a 6-7-year-old body. Oh my God, that's so weird.
So little girl told the man she forgave him and begged him to take her home to Mathura, but the parents forbid it.
Of course they did.
At that time, the national press are sniffing around. They caught wind of it all. And even Mahatma Gandhi's interest was piqued.
Wow, she's famous.
Absolutely. He went and visited Shanti Devi's home and invited her to his ashram. And then Gandhi appointed a committee of inquiry of 15 prominent people to verify all her memories. Not even 9 years old at this point. Because then in 1935, when she was 9 years old, Shanti Devi finally got her wish to return to Mathura, accompanied by her parents and the committee members. Off they went.
And then what happened?
Well, they got to a train platform and there was an older man there who stood before her in this typical Mathura dress. She'd never met him before. Committee members asked her, do you recognise the man? And she reverently touched his feet, stepped back, and then she said to a committee member that this person was Jet her husband's older brother, which shocked everybody because it was true.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, she spotted him. Then they all got into this carriage. The committee members told her, you can tell the driver of the horse-drawn carriage to go wherever you want. So she took them to the house where Lugdi had lived when she was first married. And along the way, she correctly identified landmarks, commented on accurate changes that had taken place since Lugdi had died. And then when they were approaching people near the house, she accurately pointed out Lugdi's father-in-law and recalled the exact words he'd once said to Lugdi. However, there was an inaccuracy regarding the colour of the house, which Shanti Devi had insisted was yellow, but in fact it was white. The thing is, Michelle, they had repainted it since Lugdi had died, and this was confirmed by the current occupant.
No, so everything she said was true.
Yep.
What kind of life does this little girl have? Do you know what I mean? Because she's not a little girl.
It's living two lives at once.
Yeah.
Then they walked along to Chalby Street, which is where she lived when she died. And she ran into a young man, threw her arms around him, and this turned out to be Lugdi's brother. He asked her some significant questions, which in the end convinced him this little girl was the embodiment of his dead sister.
Oh, my goodness.
When she went inside, she knew her way around, and
Yep.
she was disappointed to find her clothes were gone and her former worship room was being used for storage. And then she was handed a jewellery box, which she distinguished what had belonged to Lugdi and what was now the stuff owned by Kedarnath's current wife, because he did remarry. Naughty, naughty.
Well, of course he's going to, you know. He had a 10-year-old wife. Dude's going to find another one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then she got out into the courtyard. She was really confused because there were stones where the well had been. So people moved the stones to reveal that there was a well there, which was now almost dry. So she's right on every count, bless her heart. And then she was asked by the committee members about this 150 rupees she said she'd hidden. She took them back to her room to show them, and here is the report that they lodged. She cast her eyes around and put her foot in a corner, saying that the money lay hidden underneath the spot. The spot was dug up, and about a foot deep under the spot, an old-fashioned gala, an arrangement for keeping valuables underground, was found. But there was no money. The girl would not believe. Somewhat later on, we learned that the money had been taken out by Lugdi's husband after her death.
Right.
Yeah.
But he
Of course it
didn't
was.
give it to the kid.
Krishna.
He kept it for himself.
No, she wanted it given to Krishna.
Right. Well.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, not the kid.
Well, no. He bought all that new jewelry for the new wife.
Yeah. So then they went to the temple, and on their way, the group had to stop again because Shanti Devi wanted to look at the house where her family had lived when she was a child. And while she was there, she first mistook Lugdi's aunt for her mother, but then she did quickly recognise both her mother and her father.
Oh.
Shanti then convinced Lugdi's family that she was the reincarnation of their daughter after speaking to them about lots of personal things.
Wow.
All this information, Michelle, was verified by the committee members, and they published this report in 1936, which is a 26-page booklet that concluded that Shanti Devi was the reincarnation of Lugdi.
Wow.
There were tons more interviews, reports, papers, all conducted to further verify this. And then in 2005, there's a paper called The Life Beyond. Reincarnation researcher Titus Rivas and K.S. Rowat give transcribed excerpts from 5 interviews with Shanti Devi on her memories between being Lugdi and becoming Shanti. And this is where it gets interesting, Michelle. Here's what she said.
Okay.
She reported no pain at the time of her death. She experienced profound darkness at the time of death, seeing a dazzling light. She said she came out of the physical body in vaporous form. She reported the coming of 3 or 4 people, young people wearing saffron or yellow robes.
Yeah.
She remembers being placed in a square or rectangular vessel and the feeling of going up and up.
Okay.
Of seeing an extremely beautiful garden on the way up, coming across a river, passing through 3 planes, ultimately being taken to the 4th. There was an absence of open space on the 4th plane, an absence of any sense of time on the 4th plane, and the presence of saints on all the 4 planes. Also the presence of a bright or godly entity on the 4th plane.
Wow.
Then she remembers reading a review of the actions she performed in earthly life on the 4th plane. Then she remembers being put on a staircase of silver and gold, which was very bright, for descending back and brought back down by the same people who took her up. And she had no feelings of hunger or thirst in the black cell. She came back down into a dark cell and she wasn't hungry or thirsty.
And she's 9, giving all
She's
of
9.
this.
Yes. She also told of witnessing Lugdi's funeral, Well, she may not be 9 at this time. It could have been some time after. She remembers witnessing the funeral as if it was her own, and of being a tiny speck without any physical form, with no sense of time or space, but the feeling that all the universe and all her lives were contained within her. And then she said she felt herself wedged in between something, which she later realised was her mother's womb.
Oh.
So you're probably wondering what happened to Shanti Devi. Well, she carried on her schooling, but upset her parents when she decided never to marry, since she was in effect a widow, and Hindu custom requires that widows not remarry. And when she was 21, she went through a bit of a rough patch, which was probably due to all the investigations that she was going through. People said she was crying every night. She was having bad dreams about Lugdi's death. So it was a rough time for her.
Poor old Shanti.
The rough patch that she went through was probably also her trying to remember the bits in between the two lives, which were quite troubling for her. And in other cases where children have memories of past lives, which we've talked about before, it generally fades by the age of 5, but not so for her. She felt she was living 2 lives simultaneously.
I mean, obviously, it's really curious. Yeah. And as a listener, it's like, wow. But to be that person, to live that life where it's not your life, it's someone else's life, and all your memories, creating memories in one life, but they're having to compete and fight each other for the memories of a past life. I just think it would be terrible.
It gets very confusing, doesn't it? Well, Shanti Devi believed it was Lugdi's overwhelming desire to live that enabled this reincarnation and got it to stick so well.
Vividly,
Yeah, she says, I was not empty enough. I had so many desires and yearnings. I wanted to come back to Earth. If I hadn't longed so desperately to come back, I would not have needed to incarnate again, but would have been reunited with Brahma and eternal life. Shanti Devi died, age 61, in 1987. So who knows if she came back for a third or an extra time?
Maybe.
We haven't heard. But that is the fascinating story of Shanti Devi, and I'm really surprised that we'd never heard of her before.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Really fascinating.
Real life.
Real life.
True crime.
True crime.
Do you like supernatural?
I've always thought, and we've talked about this in the podcast as well,
Yes.
that people get signs or cues about life or what they need to do when they need it the most. I'm sure that you would probably call this confirmation bias. But I think other people call it divine intervention or a sign from above, or it might be, right place, right time. But no matter what you call it, I think there are times in your life when you're looking for direction and somehow out of nowhere, you'll speak to a friend who will say something really kind of innocuous, but so profound to you that, you're like, oh my God, and the penny drops.
Yeah.
Or you'll see something or watch something or hear a song or whatever it is, and you'll get a feeling that you were meant to receive that message at that time.
Like when you look at your clock and it's 11:11.
Yes, or you just feel really a bit like, fuck, what am I meant to be doing here? Like, give me a sign, and something actually happens to give you...
Like Alexa goes off and says, timer for dinner. Finished now. Oh, that's right. That's why I'm here standing in front of the oven.
Well, kind of. But I think it happens all the time to people in small ways. For me, this happened very recently. It happened to me twice.
Oh.
Yeah. And look, I hope I'm not dragging this stuff out, because our eavesdroppers know I was in Australia recently to be by the bedside of my mum, Jen, who had multiple health problems all go wrong at once. It was a really scary time for her and my family. I wanted to touch upon something that inspired the story that I'm looking at this episode, because I truly do believe that things come to us in our hour of need. And this particular story came to me at a moment when I really needed it. So without going into too much detail, just to give you a bit of backstory, Jen went into hospital with a reaction to an antibiotic, and the doctors messed up the diagnosis. They gave her medication that immediately sent her into kidney failure. And her kidneys were perfect before she went into hospital. And then she got pneumonia and influenza A and sepsis and blah, 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 blah. The list goes on. But the whole time, Mum kept saying, I'm okay. I'm not in any pain. But she hadn't always felt like that. And look, she was in there for a couple of days short of 7 weeks. So she was in there for a long time. Actually, before I arrived in Australia, after, the incorrect medications made her sick. She was lying in hospital. She was exhausted and she was feeling hopeless, and she was just getting sicker and sicker in the hospital, just thinking, I don't know if I can do this. Then one night she was just feeling terrible and cold, like to the bone cold. And it was cold in Canberra this winter. She was shivering. She was so cold and she was so weak. She couldn't even pull the blankets over her body. And she just thought, I give up. If I go to sleep and I don't wake up, it is what it is.
Wow.
She woke up that morning and she was toasty warm with blankets all over her, wrapped around her body and around her head. And she said to me, she just had this feeling. She said, I'm not sick. This is not my time. From that minute on, she said she felt differently about things. But as the person sitting by her bedside and talking to those doctors, she was sick. They made us believe that she had really only days to live. And so it was really hard to reconcile, because Mum is saying, I feel fine and I'm not sick, but I'm seeing someone who is so weak they can't even lift their head up.
Yeah.
The doctors are saying, they're looking at the charts going, this is bad. Mum's on drips. She's having blood transfusions. We all thought it was touch and go whether she was going to make it. At one of my lowest points, I thought, Mum is never leaving this hospital. It was really a devastating feeling. My sister Steph, who is the one that loves Celine Dion.
Yeah.
Yeah. She is still dirty on me for stitching her up about that.
I bet she is.
She came down this one weekend from Sydney to help out, because I was sleeping in the hospital every night in Mum's cubicle on this thing called a princess chair. Not even joking. That's the name of it. It doesn't go flat, you're kind of never ever flat. But I was sleeping on this, and on the wards you can't ever have a full night's rest, because the nurses are coming in and they're like checking blood pressure and people are screaming. And, there was this one guy who was like yelling all night and talking about Beelzebub and...
What? Pistol pump?
Beelzebub.
Beelzebub.
Beelzebub, yes.
Oh.
It was scary. Scary stuff. There was a lady with just an eye socket. There was a lady who had like a body with no legs, and there was a lot going on. It's hard for anyone to get sleep and to heal. So I had a night off and Steph was sleeping on the princess chair. I just went home to sleep, but I couldn't. I was wired. So I opened up my computer. I wanted to try and watch something, but I couldn't focus. So I just started closing tabs, and there was a YouTube tab open. I think it was something that I'd done for Patreon, a trailer for a telly-rec or something. But on the column was this clip, and it said, woman in coma has near-death spiritual awakening and realizes why we are here.
Oh.
By Anita Moorjani. Somehow I just found myself watching it, and her story was amazing, and I was totally enthralled by it. And she was talking about how she had cancer and then how her kidney had failed. And I was like, fuck. And then she talked about what happened to her, and it kind of changed things for me. So I'm going to talk about Anita Moorjani's near-death experience today and tell you how it also changed my perspective on illness at a time when I really needed a change of perspective. So we're going back to 2006. I did look at some songs. We've got Bad Day by Daniel Powter. Remember that?
I don't know. No.
Yes, you will.
I've had a bad day.
Exactly.
Yes, I do. Yes.
And then this one was also in the charts.
Oh, God, don't even go
Oh,
there.
it's terrible,
I hate
terrible.
that. James Blunt, isn't it?
Yes. Then there was Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield.
Oh, yes, that bloody song. It's still around. It still comes on.
Is unwritten. And Hips Don't Lie, Shakira.
Hips don't lie.
I knew all of them, so did you. So I guess, we're
Great.
not doing so bad.
All right, so we were listening.
And we were listening. But in 2006, after a long battle with cancer that was not going well,
Yeah.
Anita slipped into a coma, and she was in hospital, and her doctor told her family that Anita only had a few hours left to live. But while she was in that coma for 36 hours,
Sheesh.
she had a near-death experience where she was told, basically, you have a choice, stay or go. A little bit of background about Anita. In 2006, she was living in Hong Kong with her husband, Danny, and she said she just had an ordinary life. She's of Indian heritage. So she says culturally she was brought up to be shy and a people pleaser. She was conflict avoidant, and she says basically she was an introvert. And she grew up in a time when Indian women were discouraged from being independent because daughters were brought up to obey their fathers and live at home until they were married. And then once they were married, the woman would then be the responsibility of her husband. So she was discouraged from going to university or having a job or being independent. But then she met her husband, although she'd had an arranged marriage that she backed out of, which made her a complete disgrace to her family. But she married this guy, Danny, and she was super happy. And she was one of those people who were always helping all her friends above and beyond. She was always there for her husband, but she never really felt that she had her own voice. But she was okay with that. And then she was diagnosed with cancer in 2002, and it was a stage 2B lymphoma, which means it had spread, but only to one part of her body, not everywhere. And she says it started as a lump on the side of her neck. Before that, around a year and a half before she had this cancer diagnosis, her best friend was diagnosed with cancer. And Anita put her own life on hold to care for her friend.
Wow.
And when she wasn't at the hospital, she felt incredible guilt about doing anything that felt fun or frivolous. You know,
sure.
Like if she went shopping, she would just be like, fuck, I'm out buying a new dress and my friend's dying in the hospital. At the same time, her brother-in-law also got a cancer diagnosis, and they were all the same age as Anita.
Oh, God.
So the best friend and the brother-in-law all being treated by some of the best cancer doctors in the world. To cut a long story short, both of them died after long and kind of agonizing rounds of radiation and chemo. So when Anita got cancer, she thought to herself, because they hadn't died at this point, she was thinking, two people I love are deteriorating before my eyes. So when the doctor said to her, you need chemo and you need radiation, she was like, not doing it. It's not working for them. Why would it work for me?
Right.
And look, I'm not saying people shouldn't have chemo, because Jen, my mum, also had cancer and chemo and radiation 10 years ago, and it worked for her.
Yeah.
So I think they're incredible treatments, and they do keep people alive. But Anita was disillusioned. And what's interesting is that in the period before she got cancer, after, her best friend had been diagnosed, she was terrified of getting cancer, to the point where she became so focused on not getting cancer. She did all this stuff, like she researched everything about how not to get cancer. So she threw away her microwave. She stopped using plastic containers. She only ate organic. She went raw vegan. She took shitloads of supplements, and she got diagnosed with cancer. And I just feel like sometimes, and she says this about herself, she was like, I was so focused on the cancer and not getting it that it was like I was attracting the exact thing that I didn't want. Once she got her own cancer diagnosis, she was like, I don't want chemo. So she left her best friend in the hospital, packed a suitcase, and went to India to do Ayurveda. And she was there for a few months, and it was amazing for her. She says that the whole mindset around cancer is very different over there. And they believe it's not a disease, it's an imbalance in your body. So you need to balance your body. So she started eating differently. She was eating cooked veggies and rice and dairy and doing all the things for her constitution, which is what all the Ayurvedic system is. And she got better. The tumours on her lymph nodes started to shrink. And she was like, fantastic, I'm ready to go back to Hong Kong. But when she went home, the best friend and the brother-in-law only had weeks to live. And then she got pulled into all of that negativity from before. All the good work she did in India unraveled at the same time that they both died. Everyone was telling her the Ayurveda was bullshit, chemo was the only way. Even though she'd got better on Ayurveda and her friends had died, she was so fearful that she was like, okay, I need to do it. I need to do radiation. I need to do chemo. And when she finally went, they were like, you've waited too long. It is too late to save you. And they kind of just started administering palliative care as her treatment.
Oh, gosh. Right.
And then on February the 2nd, 2006, Anita went into a coma. And she had tumours the size of golf balls from the base of her skull, all around her neck, under her arms, in her chest, all the way down to her abdomen. I mean, she was riddled with tumours. She couldn't absorb any nutrition. She was 38 kilos, basically a skeleton. And her muscles were deteriorating. She couldn't walk. She couldn't even sit. She had pneumonia. Her lungs were full of fluid. And, you know, she had open sores on her body. She was in
God.
pain. It was terrible. So when she went into a coma, everyone thought, game over. Even the doctors were like, this is it. She's not going to make it. Unbeknownst to Anita, once she went into the coma, her brother flew out from India to be by her bedside, as well as her mum, because they were like, this is it. While she was in the coma, she says she had this feeling that she was leaving her body and that it felt incredible. Yeah. And she says she knows her physical body was lying on the hospital bed, but she felt amazing because she was no longer in that body. And she says she was aware of everything that was happening in the room and that she somehow felt like enveloped by something that she was kind of unable to describe with words. But if she had to describe it, she'd call it unconditional love.
Wow.
And she said she felt euphoric and free and no longer attached to this kind of diseased physical body. But there was part of her that wanted her family to know that she was fine. And she didn't know before she went into the coma that, you know, her brother was on his way. But she knew he was coming. Like, she just knew. She thought, oh, you know, my physical body better not die before he gets here because he'll be really upset. And she said she could hear everything and see everything that was going on in that hospital room.
Yes.
She could hear the doctor telling her husband she's not going to make it through the night. She could hear that all her organs were shutting down and that her kidneys had completely failed. I mean, they were done.
Oh,
and they were saying things like, even if she did come out of the coma,
she wouldn't be the same.
No, she would be fucked. And she could hear it all.
Right. God.
And then she said she then could see things like her brother sitting on the plane. Then she became aware of other beings that were there to help her through the process. And what she felt from these other beings were pure, unconditional love. And then her dad was there, and so was her best friend. And she says that she always felt that when she passed away, she thought she would be judged for the things that she'd done in her life, like letting her dad down, running away from that arranged marriage, and causing shame on the family. But she says all there was unconditional love. And for her, it was absolutely exhilarating. And she says she realized that when you cross over, not only do you leave behind your physical body, but you leave behind culture and religion and belief and all the baggage that anyone accumulates over their lifetime. So she's in this coma for 36 hours and she reaches a point where she's given a choice. Come back into your body. And she was like, no way. My body is sick and I don't want to go into that thing. But then she had this immediate understanding about what caused her illness and that if she went back, her body would heal very, very quickly because her purpose had not been fulfilled. And she didn't really know what that purpose was, but the key message was, if you leave your body and you cut your life short, you won't fulfill your purpose or your husband's purpose. So if you want to go back, you can. And also, she said it wasn't her time. And she had this deep understanding of how everyone on this planet is interconnected.
Wow.
And she also knew, she says, that her body was fucked, but she was told that even though her kidneys had failed, shut down, if she chose to go back, the test results for her kidney function would show that her kidneys had not completely failed and she could be healed. And the same with the cancer.
Right.
But if she chose not to come back, the autopsy would show that she died due to kidney failure and organ failure and cancer.
Okay.
She turned to the people who had come to greet her, and it was her dad who said to her, you need to go back and you need to live your life fearlessly. And she said she had a vision of what that looked like. And she had a sense of her purpose, which was to use her voice by speaking to people. And that terrified her in her real life. She's shy and she's an introvert. But her dad said, you don't have to figure out how or when or what it is. Just go back and live your life and it will all unfold. And she thought, it's not my time. After 36 hours in a coma, she decided to come back. And she opened her eyes. She told her brother, I knew you were coming. She turned to the doctor, who she'd never seen before, and said, hi, Dr. Chan. And he was like, how do you know my name? Then he tells the family, listen, don't get your hopes up. She's in a critical condition. We're not sure she's going to pull through. But over the next few days, the test results come in and the doctors are like, your kidneys are working.
Huh.
And then they told her, your tumours are shrinking. And by day 5, they'd shrunk by 70%.
What?
Yep. And she was like, get these tubes out of me. Take away the food tube. Take away the oxygen tube. I'm not sick. And over the next 5 weeks, she completely healed and was cancer-free with functioning kidneys.
Huh?
And the doctor even said to her, I don't know what to write in your medical record because I've never seen this before. And he made this gesture of like throwing her medical files in the bin. She went home and she has lived her life cancer-free ever since. Now, I'm watching this with mum in the hospital with kidney failure. And I'm like, fuck, she's saying the same things as my mum. It's not my time.
Yeah.
I'm not sick. So I went to the hospital and I said to my sister, by this time next week, mum will be home, back living life. I said to mum, you don't need that oxygen tube, because over the past few days, mum had been lying in bed and sleeping on one side and the oxygen tube was like half hanging out of her face anyway.
So it wasn't doing its job.
It wasn't doing its job, but they kept putting it in. And I was like, no, mum, we're getting you off that oxygen. We're going to get you out of here. We started doing things differently. I got her up walking. I got her up sitting in bed. She started eating again. And bit by bit, she got better.
Amazing.
Yep. And it took 9 days, but she's now at home and living her life with functioning kidneys and her cat Bella. So I really don't know what to make of any of what just happened, because it was pretty dire. And actually, at one of my lowest points, when I first arrived in Australia, I found myself calling my friend Monique, who'd been through a similar experience with her mum. And I was crying on the phone because I was so scared of what was going to happen to mum. And we talked a lot about the hospital system and outcomes. But before we hung up the phone, she said to me, listen, Michelle, even though everything feels pretty bad, don't forget that the miracle can happen. And her words were so profound to me in that moment. I really found myself going from kind of hopeless to hopeful. And I thought, maybe mum does have a chance to pull through. And we got the miracle.
Yes, you did.
And I really feel like watching that weird video, which I had never searched for, speaking to my friend at that right moment and seeing that video at the right time, I feel really changed my perspective on how to approach things. And I don't know what to make of any of it, but I think it's amazing what this woman, Anita, went through. And I'm going to link up that video on the Patreon and people can watch it if they feel like it and see what they think of her story.
That's incredible, Michelle. If you hadn't told me the last bit about how Jen had turned it around and how she said she wasn't sick and everything, I would have said to you, have you verified that YouTube story? Because often I think they just make shit up on YouTube. It's really an unregulated free-for-all for all kinds of tall tales.
It is, isn't it?
And obviously that's how a lot of misinformation is getting spread, and a lot of division in society at the moment is caused by things like YouTube and TikTok and whatever.
Have you heard that Elle Macpherson's got some book about how she cured her cancer by eating greens and taking her wellness supplement?
I have heard that she's been slammed because she didn't use Western mainstream medicine.
Yes.
And people say, oh, you're really stupid. Well, she's okay, so maybe she did the right thing for her body. And I think, like, you just preempted this story by saying the Western medicine is fine. Obviously, it works for some, but for others, they choose a different route and they turn out okay. I mean, sometimes you choose both routes and it doesn't turn out okay.
Of course. That is, I would say, it's a 50-50 on anything.
Yeah.
You know.
It's just interesting what you've said, and I would like to know if it was verified, if that person is anywhere else in the media apart from on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
But even if she's not, even if it is a made-up thing, it didn't hurt you, did it? In fact, it did the opposite. It helped you.
Well, she wrote a book about her experience that the owner of Hay House Media was so moved by her story that they're the ones that have printed it.
Okay, so she's real.
Yeah, Hay House are a very reputable alternative wellness.
Yeah. Louise Hay.
Louise Hay, yes. So she is real. She's talked a lot about her experiences, and I don't know how I found this video.
It's odd. Yeah. You could say, Michelle, that Eavesdroppin saved Jen's life.
Yes, it could, because I was probably, looking at a Telewreck trailer for Dirty Pop or something, and or My 600-Pound Wife, and then and then stumbled across this video. But I also do believe in the power of people's
Positive
good
thinking.
thoughts. And obviously we know that, Saffrow White Witch was helping out Mum, and people were all giving beautiful positive thoughts. And look, maybe Mum would have had this outcome regardless of whether I'd seen this video. And we will never, ever know.
That cannot be proven.
No. And also you can never prove whether or not anyone, not just this woman, Anita, or my mum, but anyone in life, had they done something different, had they done Ayurveda, had they not done chemo, how their life would turn out, because you don't get those second chances. You get to make one decision. There's no going back and going, oh, let's go back and try if it would have worked out this way when it comes to stuff like this. But it was a strange time, and I thought this woman's near-death experience and what she experienced as having a choice, come back or not come back, it was really interesting, but very different to what Shanti Devi went through, because there were no levels, there were no any of that kind of stuff, no planes.
I was thinking that when you were describing her experiences, and I was wondering if it relates to what you know, and what you've been taught. And
maybe. And you know what? We'll never know. Unless we have one.
Or go nuts at the weekend on the psilocybins.
Microdosing.
It is mushroom season. Not saying I'm going to go off and get high and go tripping.
No, you'll be on the chanterelles.
I actually did. I am on the chanterelles. We had chanterelles last night. Yes, they're out already.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your amazing story.
Hey, thank you for your incredible story. I think you've probably touched and moved quite a few of our listeners out there, actually, Michelle, with that story, and me. So thank you. And we're so happy that Jen's on the mend and that you're back.
Yeah, and Bella is very happy to have Mum back. Mum's now got a walker, and she's loving that walker. Bella's all over it. Mum's pushing her on the walker.
Watch your tail, Bella. Well, I think it's at that time now, Michelle, where we get to say those 3 statements which indicate that we are at the end of the podcast. They are, wherever you are,
whatever you do,
just keep eavesdropping.
Eavesdroppin'.